Hello, Malcolm. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today because we are going to talk about men striking back. That didn't come across.
Men striking back, yeah. Well,
they're fighting for their rights, and they're finally making progress. All right, men have been basically.
wait, men's rights is actually making progress now?
That's the crazy thing is that for the past 15 years, the concept of men's rights has basically been like men being angry about the fact that they don't have any rights. I guess this might have been how it was for like women's rights for the longest time of like, well, ain't that cute? You guys are so disgruntled about your lack of rights. It's never going to change, sweetie.
No, and I love what they would always then say. They'd be like, well, that's actually a feminism issue. Like, don't you understand it? I'm like, well, then how come the feminists never fight for it? And they're like, oh, once you're in cages, then we'll fight to loosen the what do they call that? The zip ties.
Yeah, I was operating under the assumption that nothing would ever change. But things are actually starting to change. And this is big. It's huge. And so what we're going to do is look at two major areas where finally the dam is beginning to break. And I think momentum is only going to build from here. We're going to start with divorce laws in various United States where by the new default is shocking. Men get 50% of custody in divorces, which is.
So are you going to talk about like what states this is happening?
Yeah,
if it's actually happening and not just like in the law?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also just crazy to me that like isn't always the default. Like the assumption that like, well, of course, each parent shares custody by default, right? Unless there's a good reason not to. But no, that wasn't the case. And it's being resolved. It started with Kentucky and now it's happened in more states. We're going to look at sort of what's going on there. And then we're also going to look at the Texas Heartbeat Act, which is this really interesting form of what you could call vigilante-based law justice, which has both made it harder for groups to use like a Supreme Court case to take out because it's based on individual action. I'll explain more.
Explain the law.
It allows men, or it allows anyone to sue in relation to we'll say wrongful termination of an unborn baby's life after they have a heartbeat, like if they didn't consent to it and if they felt that they were damaged by it. So
okay, so what men can do this? What men in relation to this?
The men who were the fathers of the baby.
So the fathers of the baby, but I thought also like parents can sue sometimes too?
No, but parents can be liable, friends can be liable, doctors can be liable. So all sorts of people can get sued. Yeah. And then we're also going to go through some additional little wins and like other little signs of hope that not just in these areas, but in other men's rights adjacent areas, we're seeing successful pushback and momentum building. And then at the end, I'm going to highlight an area for improvement that I find to be important that many people in the comments of our videos have said, hey, like, please highlight this issue of the men's rights sphere, which we'll see if you can guess. So let's get into it, starting with the Kentucky divorce laws. And just so you know, there's a really good Wall Street Journal article talking about this, titled "Divorce Plunged in Kentucky, Equal Custody for Fathers is a Big Reason Why. A law setting 50-50 shared custody as the state standard was hailed as a victory for fathers, but critics say it puts mothers and children at risk." So basically what happened in Kentucky, and this is important because it happened in 2018, so we have enough time to see what has happened since this legislation was passed. But Kentucky in 2018 became the first state to pass a law making equally shared custody the default arrangement in divorces and separations. And since that happened, 4 other states, so this is Arkansas, West Virginia, Florida, and Missouri, have passed their own versions of this custody bill. In around 20 more states, keep in mind, there are only 50 US states, are considering or close to passing similar laws, according to analysis by National Parents Organization. That is big. I mean, if this quickly, we're already getting to...
Right, so how quickly did the first one go to passing to 20 states being considering it now?
Well, I mean, it's 2025 now, and that was 2018. So like 6 years, 7 years-ish. Yeah, like this is pretty, it's fast. I mean, from a legislative standpoint, it's kind of like...
Are we seeing a changing in outcomes though? Like, do you see any...
We are. And I'm also going to compare sort of this change in outcomes to China, because we did do an episode on like China trying to reduce divorce rates and increase fertility rates through regulatory shifts akin to this. And I think you'll also find that quite interesting. But let's just start with what happened in Kentucky. And what's interesting is because now in Kentucky we have enough data, the divorce rate plummeted. Between 2016 and 2023, it fell 25%.
Whoa, so it's not just outcomes are changing, divorce rates. When you make women responsible, they stop getting divorces. 20% reduction just because 50-50 custody law?
So it's 25%. Now, this is tempered by the fact that there has actually been a nationwide decline in divorce of 18%. So, we're talking about a marginal 7%, but that's meaningful.
Huge.
That's huge.
Well,
and this is above and beyond men just getting equal custody, which is huge for them.
Well, it shows how many women just view divorce as I don't have to do anything and I get, a check for the next 18 years, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things about equal custody is I'm pretty sure it's like way harder to get good
alimony. Yes. So that that kind of happened actually a little bit after this legislation was passed, because again, men have no rights. Nothing's gonna ever change. But fortunately, recently Kentucky's legislature did decide that parents who spend more time caring for their children should also pay less in child support. So to be fair, in these divorces, men still often are saddled with child support. However, at least now the state's like, oh, wait a second, you have 50% custody. What's going on here? And I've actually seen this show up organically in like financial audit interview YouTube channel shows where mothers who are used to getting child support are complaining about this.
Yes, they're freaking out. They're like, what? Well, what am I supposed to do? Get a job?
They're like, and now my child support's gone down because my husband is, has 50% custody. So this is 100% showing up like in the wild naturally. And I think that's really big.
For pronatalism, this is something we should push much more. I think forced equal custody and forced no child support when there is equal custody, because there shouldn't be child support in equal custody cases.
I mean, I get child support in the event that a woman like completely dropped her career.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like she went into the marriage to be a homemaker and never had a job. I get that, even in equal custody. But I think that the sort of the worse you make divorce, the less divorce we're gonna have, right? And
kind of, but we'll see a comparison there. Actually, I'm just gonna jump to it because we should compare how this is related to China. So while this reform obviously is focused on first and foremost creating a fairer system, like this legislation wasn't passed with the knowledge that it was going to reduce divorce rates. It was just it was creating a system that incentivized less adversarial breakups. So there's like less money spent on lawyers, less fighting, less people just divorcing to try to get a bunch of stuff out of their partner. And in contrast, China's policies, which we did go over in an episode a while ago, focus more on slowing or preventing divorce by regulation and delay.
Yeah, I remember. I thought it had a positive effect. It had a negative effect.
So both have reduced divorce rates, but China's approach also appears to have discouraged both marriage and childbearing, which is an effect that is not seen.
Why is it? I don't understand how this could affect marriage and childbearing, the Chinese policy.
Well, so the Chinese policy is different. Since 2021, China requires a mandatory 30-day cooling off period for couples seeking an uncontested, that is to say, mutual consent divorce. And either party can withdraw during this time, which halts the process. And the cooling off period did lead to a drop in divorce, but honestly, it's lower. So their divorce rate fell from 3.4% in 2019 to around 1.8% in 2023. I think that's lower.
But I think our legal change is much better. So,
but then at the same time, marriage rates declined as well, and the birth rate continued dropping, which suggests that more people now are just avoiding marriage entirely, possibly to sidestep the difficulty of divorce. And there has been no measured decline in marriage or birth rate.
So I'm going to push back on the cause here. I'd suggest people watch our video on Nobody Wants to Marry Chinese Women Anymore. There has been a Chinese cultural change around women where they're
there's that too.
Worse than like woke women in the United States.
Yeah.
And they're just, nobody wants to marry them anymore. And so I don't think I think that that's what we're seeing is an increasing degradation of what it means to be like a male in dating in China, and that's leading to the lower marriage rate. In terms of the divorce rate changes, I mean, contrast the implications on the decision. In China, it's just giving you time to cool off if you have like a hot head. But in the United States, there's many women who get divorced and just feel like it's nothing but positives for them. They get to
Oh,
date again.
100%.
They get
Yeah.
the guys who they're dating to help support them. They get to, have their old partner pay them a ton of money every month or something like that.
Yeah.
And they get full control over the kids. So, they don't even have to worry about like any sort of compromises they were making in terms of child rearing. They want
Mhm.
to transition them, just go ahead, which happens a lot in these cases.
Well,
And
yeah, and
so
there has been, I forget exactly where this happened, but wasn't there legislation in some states that would actually put your odds of getting any custody at risk if you were documented as fighting a child's transition?
well, that was a true everywhere. There was a common divorce tactic is
Mhm.
the mom would try to convince the kid that they were trans or at least question the thing. And if the dad was not 100% on board, it was very easy to get custody taken away from him.
Mm.
And I would argue that a huge chunk of child transitions come from that specific scenario because it is so common in court cases.
Mm.
Which, of course, think about it from the perspective of like a sociopathic mom, right? Like, well, if
So
I
messed
can
up
convince
though.
them they're trans and the dad, or even just to question things, and the dad is like, no, she's just doing this as a tactic in court or something, which is what a sane dad would do, it's easy to win that particular case.
Exactly.
But I think that like women just had it so easy and now they're like, oh, this is hard. Now, why isn't this leading to a reduction in divorces in the United States? Because I think that this is a mindset that women often adapt long after they get married. I think very few women in the United States go into a marriage with the intention of eventually getting a divorce. I think that they are expecting, even if the guy's like rich or something, they expect him to die if they don't like him that much. I think very few are like, okay, I'm just going to go in. I'm going to wait till I can get a divorce and then I get that sweet alimony payment or anything like that. They think things are going to work out. So they do not consider the implication of the changed laws. The changed laws just make it easier for their group of divorced friends to tell them how great it is to be divorced.
Yeah, that's not, at least the people interviewed in the Wall Street Journal article covering this don't cite that exactly. They, in terms of like these are lawyers and stuff who are talking with their clients about it. Many of them are choosing to not get divorced because they're like, well, if I have to share custody 50-50 anyway, I'm basically seeing my partner all the time and I might as well just work it out. So it's even a little bit scaled back from that. Like if we're talking about the acts of reasonable people, which is sometimes the case in divorce, right? They're just like, ugh. Like if I can't just walk away entirely very conveniently, I might as well work this out. And I think that's meaningful and interesting. And I think a lot better for kids to
Mhm.
have a father. But of course the critics are concerned that people aren't leaving abusive partners in order to protect their children. Like, oh, my husband hit me. I can't let him have custody because he'll hit my kid. And there were cases in which mothers were subject to domestic abuse, but because the children were not abused, the children still got like were with 50-50 custody.
I think that's fine.
And the law, I just want to point out that the if one parent is subject to a domestic violence order, so this is even from a mother, the presumption of 50-50 custody is automatically overturned. So it really depends on the case. And I think
Mm.
that these cases in which women are like, but I was abused and now I have to share custody, are not actually representative of what the law actually says. And I think it's really similar to how things like the don't say gay legislation was framed, where it was framed as, oh, you literally can't mention the concept of same-sex attraction, when it really was something very different.
So we have an episode on this. It's quite old at this point. I only remember it had like an outline of a body on like the floor or something, and it was something because I didn't want to put in the title like stuff you're not allowed to talk about or the woman question or something. And in this one, we go into domestic violence, and
Oh yeah.
I would say it is really not a good sign for the woman if there is domestic violence in the house and the woman is the only one who's subject to it and the kids are not. Like that shows that it's not that the guy has a bad temper or something like that. Because in the episode I pointed out, there's been instances that I know of where domestic violence happened. Sorry, and I'll put this here so I can replace what I said earlier so no one clips me out of context. But what I'd say is sometimes domestic abuse is not as cut and dry as we make it out to be, societally speaking.
Okay.
And what I paired this with in that episode was the statistics around domestic abuse between female-female couples, male-male couples, and
right.
male-female couples. And if you look at male-female couples versus female-female couples, it's way higher in female-female couples. I decided to go look at the actual statistics just to make sure I was getting this right. And yes, what I remembered is accurate. If you're looking at overall violence in relationships, for women, it's 35% are subject to it in heterosexual relationships, and for men it's 29%. What you'll see is male-male gay relationships have lower than either of those rates at 26%, and female-female have much higher than either of those rates at 43.8%. What's really interesting is that bisexuals in mixed relationships have some of the highest rates of abuse, with 61.1% in women and 37.3% in men. Now, if you look at physical violence here, you see for females in a relationship, it's 29.8%. For males in a relationship, it's 26.3%. Male-male, it's lower than either of those, 24%. Female-female, it's way higher than either of those at 36.3%. And then again, for bisexual relationships, it's much higher than either of those at 55.1% for women and 27% for men. So it seems that the more women you have in a relationship, the more abuse is going to be had within that relationship. The other takeaway I'd have for this chart, which may be worthy of another episode later to dig more into this, is that bisexual people are extremely abusive, with both bisexual men and women, but particularly bisexual men being so like actually comically abusive that over half of them, well over half of them, 61%, are abusing their partner, with physical violence, 55.1%. And then for severe physical violence, 49.3% of women who are married to a bisexual man have been subject to severe physical violence. That's wild. And the male couples are sort of all over the place. I've seen ones where it's lower than heterosexual relationships, and I've seen one where it's higher than heterosexual relationships. So I can't easily judge on that. But it does look like broadly or sort of average, male is lower domestic violence. Female is medium domestic violence. Female is very high domestic violence, which seems to say that the key inciting factor is the female.
Yeah, not a great look, but in general, laws just haven't really kept up with a lot of these things, and this is just huge. I had no idea that it had already spread to more states. So this is really notable, and hopefully will lead to much better outcomes for kids and lower burdens on men who are being unfairly treated in this case. But let's switch to men suing over abortions and the Texas Heartbeat Act, because this is also fascinating. So in short, the Texas Heartbeat Act enables any person, including estranged partners, like, completely no contact ex-boyfriend, to sue those who, quote unquote, aid and abet abortions post cardiac activity. So once you have a heartbeat with the baby. And men in several cases have leveraged this law to pursue litigation against women's friends, providers. That is to say, the medical
explain how they target their friends. This is fascinating.
So I'm going to go into some lawsuits to give you some examples. But basically, as the Wall Street Journal reported on this, quote, the law's unique aspect is its enforcement mechanism. It relies on civil lawsuits brought by private citizens rather than government action, allowing them to sue anyone who performs or facilitates an illegal abortion, end quote. What I like about this, what I think is really elegant about this, is I see this as a really cool tool of cultural sovereignty, where it's not like this state is going to sue and persecute you for getting an abortion. It's more like, okay, well, within our culture, this is not cool, and I'm going to go after you for it, and I'm allowed to.
So explain how this works, because it's not the state. Okay, so it's not like the state says abortion is illegal. It's like it's illegal from the perspective of the individuals involved in the case, specifically the father being wronged. And so the father is the only one who's allowed to sue in these cases.
Yeah, like there have been cases, for example, where, let's see if I have this listed here, because I read about this. It was really interesting. Sorry, hold on. Okay, I didn't put it in my notes, but there was a case basically of a doctor who in a newspaper in a newspaper editorial admitted to performing basically like an illegal abortion or whatever, like without a father's consent on a woman in defiance of this act, as like a legal act of protest.
Oh, so now in Texas, you need the father's consent to get an abortion.
Oh, hold on. Let me just pull up the actual thing. Editorial. Hold on. Just give me a moment. Because I want to get the facts straight on this. An interesting example is the Dr. Alan Braid lawsuit. Dr. Alan Braid, a Texas physician, publicly admitted to performing an abortion in violation of SB 8, that's the Texas Heartbeat Act, in a Washington Post op-ed as an act of civil disobedience. Anti-abortion activists tried to sue Braid under SB 8, but a Texas judge ruled in December 2022 that the plaintiff lacked legal standing to sue because he suffered no personal injury from the abortion. So again, this is an example of a law that only can be essentially enforced, or like where someone can only be held liable if they are violating basically a couple's cultural sovereignty. Or one member of the couple's cultural sovereignty.
The AI, whether or not people other than the father, i.e. the father's parents, are allowed to sue under this law, or the girl's parents are allowed to sue under this law.
Oh, okay, yes.
And then also ask, does this mean that doctors in Texas have to ask the consent of the father?
Okay.
So ask those two questions and let me know the answer.
Per the Texas Heartbeat Act, can anyone aside from the aggrieved father of the aborted child sue people who aided the abortion? Under the Texas Heartbeat Act, practically any private citizen, not just the aggrieved father, may bring a civil lawsuit against anyone who performs or aids and abets an abortion after fetal cardiac activity is detected. The law is intentionally broad and does not require the plaintiff to have any direct connection to the woman, the pregnancy, or the family involved. The only statutory exclusions are that the state or local officers cannot sue, and that the suits cannot be brought against the woman who obtained the abortion herself. Oh, interesting.
No, so the judge was sort of acting outside of the bounds of the case by saying that, and that the parents could sue. Even the girl's parents could sue.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Although, no, it says, however, while the law deputizes private citizens to sue, courts have ruled. Okay, so this is like a sort of a precedent-based pushback. Courts have ruled that some plaintiffs may lack constitutional standing. Oh, so they're using the Constitution as a pushback on this. Constitutional standing if they cannot allege a concrete and personal injury. Judges have discretion to dismiss cases where the plaintiff is not personally harmed, though the statute still allows nearly any third party to file suit. The constitutional issue of judicial standing remains hotly debated. In summary, anyone, regardless of involvement, can file a suit under SB 8, except for government actors and the woman herself. Oh, okay, that means that the woman who got the abortion can't sue like her provider. It's not that the woman has immunity. Not all claims will necessarily succeed if the court standing requirements are not met. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The Constitution is one of those things where like you don't mess with it, right? So, but I still think that this is super, super cool as a form of legislation, because you know how we are. We're like, don't use laws to impose your culture on everyone. Allow people to like basically enforce their own culture. But this still gives people of specific cultures a legal mechanism for recourse, because sometimes you need that. You know, like if you don't have that, you're going to have like honor killings and stuff, right? Yes. And this enables us to maintain civil stability while also not imposing the same laws on everyone.
Yes, and I will note that I totally understand from a guy's perspective. It feels very unfair that the woman gets to unilaterally decide whether or not the baby is kept. And women are always like, but it's in her body. She's the one that suffers. And it's like, brah, a man suffers much more over the course of his life with child support than a woman suffers over pregnancy.
That's assuming that the woman like gives the baby up for adoption if that's the baby she doesn't want. My stance on it is, if a woman wants an abortion and a man doesn't, then the man has to accept full custody and pay the going rate for surrogacy. That seems to me entirely fair.
Surrogacy, because they had consensual sex. So if a woman wants
the woman may very well have been on birth control. There are so many cases of women who go on birth control.
Right, but then I think that that's still it's not surrogacy. You could say the full cost of the birth at the hospital. That seems fair.
No, I think full cost of surrogacy is fair.
How is
because
that fair if it's consensual
dude,
sex?
it is really expensive. If it was consensual sex, but the woman was on birth control, she clearly didn't consent to get pregnant. And it should be on men equally.
They both consented to have sex, though.
Yeah, but the woman didn't consent to
This
get
is
pregnant.
a potential consequence of sex, regardless of whether or not you're on birth control. This is what can happen from sex.
Accepting an own
Therefore,
risk.
you are consenting to get pregnant when you have sex. And I note here that even if you do take Simone's original, I think I convinced her here, perspective on this, the man then, if consent to sex isn't consent to children, the man then is not consenting to children and should be able to demand an abortion of the woman if she got pregnant when he was on birth control, which I just think is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the chilling effect of this, which I mean, many women pointed out when Dobbs happened.
Yes, and it was like, yeah, then I'll be.
It was like, then I just am not going to have sex, which you're like, and yeah, that's
great
the right
idea.
answer.
That stop being such a slut. No, but I want you to go to the second question I wanted you to ask AI in relation to this, which is, do doctors generally in Texas now proactively get the husband's consent or the male partner's consent?
Oh,
because it said that he like intentionally did this. So I'll let you ask it.
following the Texas Heartbeat Act, do abortion providers in Texas now by default ask for paternal consent before proceeding with abortions? No, abortion providers do not ask for paternal consent before proceeding with abortions, even following the Texas Heartbeat Act and subsequent state restrictions. Under current Texas law, abortion is nearly prohibited except in cases of medical emergency, but consent requirements pertain only to the pregnant patient and, in the case of minors, parental consent. So the answer is basically no. But let's go through some interesting lawsuits because this shows who can be sued. And it's not always the woman. So we have some notable cases. Marcus Silva versus ex-wife's friends. In Galveston, Marcus Silva sued his ex-wife's friends for wrongful death after they allegedly aided her in obtaining abortion pills. Silva sought $1 million in damages from each friend, alleging their actions facilitated an abortion after Silva's ex-wife became pregnant during divorce proceedings. And what was she doing sleeping with him during divorce proceedings? But okay.
Wait, explain this to me. So the woman who was getting divorced with her husband got pregnant during the divorce, and then she had an abortion after that, and she was sued for that.
No, she wasn't sued. Her friends were sued. He sought $1 million in damages from each friend.
How much did he get? Did he win?
No, so the suit was actually dropped without any damages paid, but it did set a precedent for potential litigation by men claiming harm from abortions performed without their knowledge or consent. And while the ex-wife herself was not named in the suit, she did provide text evidence suggesting that Silva threatened the lawsuit to exert control during the divorce. But also, like, they were up to some, both of them, shenanigans. I mean, you don't sleep with the enemy when you're getting divorced. Don't do it. If you're sleeping together, work it out, like you don't get to. I'm typically, yes, you can have your cake and eat it too, but like this is one of those cases where I'm like, dude, this is on you. So we also have Jerry Rodriguez versus California abortion doctor. In 2025, a Houston man named Jerry Rodriguez sued a California physician named Dr. Remy Coito, allegedly for allegedly mailing abortion pills to Rodriguez's friend. So keep in mind, like, because abortions are basically not an option in Texas right now, this is a California doctor mailing.
So they were able to sue a California doctor. Did they do it successfully?
So, by the way, this resulted in the termination of 2 pregnancies that Rodriguez claims are his. So this happened a lot. So just for context, Rodriguez accused the doctor, not the woman, and seeks damages as the father of the unborn children, aiming to set a national precedent for similar claims by fathers using SB 8 in federal law. The case cites both Texas Heartbeat Act and the Comstock Act testing cross states. I think it's still going on. Liability for abortion excess. I'll ask if it's ongoing. Was resolved, settled. Is it ongoing? God, I want my finger back. Well, gosh, there's a lot of news coverage on it. It's ongoing as of September 2025, which is when we're recording this.
I know we filmed this episode a while ago, so that date might have surprised you, but I went over to see as of this morning if any information had come out on the case yet, and no.
So we don't know. We don't know yet what's going to happen. Again, this stuff is new. This is a new wave, and that's why this is so exciting. And then we have Colin Davis inquiry in Brazos County. In a case highlighted by CNN, Colin Davis sought a court order to depose a woman who traveled to Colorado to terminate a pregnancy after discovering Davis was the father. Burn. Davis claimed potential wrongful death and demanded records, aiming to explore legal liability for out-of-state abortions under Texas SB 8, though no damages or direct civil suit against the woman herself was reported. So this is also showing a rise in people basically trying to go after women who are crossing state lines via mail or physically to get abortions of children that are theirs. But again, anyone can sue over this as long as a court thinks that they're being.
Well, I think my wider thing on abortion, if people are like, what are your thoughts on when it should be like, should states have the right to make this illegal? I absolutely do think states should have the right to do this. But I think at a federal level, that's quite something different to me. I'd think a federal abortion ban, I would be pretty opposed to.
I want to highlight, because this came up in the comments of our video that ran today on harems and polygamy. Banning abortions is not going to increase the birth rate. All right.
Did people say that would increase the birth rate?
Yes, people still believe this. I don't know why people are.
If you look at a map of Europe and you look at a map of the fertility rate of each individual country, the more restrictive abortions are within a country, the lower fertility rate it is. It's almost 1/1.
Yeah, guys. We may not be the hugest fans of abortion, especially after basically an infant can feel pain. You know, like it's clear that they have a working brain and nerves.
Immoral,
because we think that's going to solve the fertility crisis. Gee whiz, people.
But what I would say is that I think that states banning abortion is completely practical, and that's just enforcing their own cultural system. And there's varying cultural systems and beliefs around when life begins. And it's okay for a region to exercise their norms around that. And then somebody's like, well, what if somebody from outside that region, you know, lives in that region, right? Or somebody with a different cultural value. And it's like, there are all sorts of cultural norms that I have to obey because of the region I just happen to be in, right? This is, I mean, a Muslim said this really well in the, you know, the one who was talking in Canada. He's like, oh, well, one day Muslims are going to be a majority here, and then being gay will be illegal because he goes, it's your own statistics in your face. But he makes a point then, which
is this the guy who just is so enthusiastically like, we're just going to replace you?
He's like, look, you have laws that I don't always agree with, that I have to obey when I'm in your country, when you guys are the majority. Why would you not have to obey the laws when we become the majority in this country?
What would happen to a gay couple in Gaza?
Executed according to Islamic law. Islam doesn't endorse gayism. Islam doesn't endorse homosexuality. Just like Canada doesn't endorse a lot of things.
So would you like to see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point it will. You know, because we have families, we are making babies. Your population is going down the slump, right? And by 2060, according to Pew Research Institute, your research, by 2060, Muslims will be the biggest religious group the world over. What are you going to do then?
Actually,
go post Sharia is even then?
Well, you know what? I'm very appreciative of the honesty. We don't usually get that.
One day we can have a Muslim majority nation here in Canada, right in your face.
Like, for example, I think, you know, piracy bans are far too restrictive or something like that. That doesn't mean I don't think that you should legally be allowed to have, you know, internet piracy bans. Or when I was in, you know, Korea, right? Like pornography is illegal in Korea. I don't think that that is something that a country should have the right to impose upon its citizens, or even within a state, right? Because in some states now you have the weird, like, you know, they check your age and everything first. I wouldn't want that within my cultural system because I think it can be used to track citizens and what they're doing.
Still your ID. My God.
But I understand why that a state's allowed to implement that. And I am supportive of that, because if you are not of that culture, then you can move to a region. People are like, well, not everyone can afford to move. Not everyone can. And it's like, No, most people can move. It would require a drastic reduction in lifestyle, but homeless people move all the time. So, like, clearly you could afford to move. What you mean is you don't want to deal with the hit to your career or lifestyle that a move would entail.
Well,
Um,
also, I mean, to go back to the Kentucky divorce laws, there was a man who was interviewed in this who I think was an activist fighting for this legislation in the first place, who literally felt him, I mean, because he loved his kids so much, he moved to where his wife was living and got the only job he could get, a really crappy job, I think working at a soap factory,
yeah.
so he could have a piddling amount of custody with his kids, like spend a few days with them in his sad little house. So we are putting a lot of attention to like, oh, here's what's being lost for many people in light of this new legislation, without giving much thought to how much men and I mean, let alone the killed unborn children have been hurt before this was passed. And I think that needs more airtime.
Yeah. No, I agree. But the larger point I'm making here, then people can be like, well, why if you think something is immoral, are you okay with people of different cultural groups doing it? I mean, it's not that I think it's moral when those cultural groups do it. It's just I think it is impractical and leads to really bad moral externalities to attempt to force your moral system on the entire world. You can watch our video where we discuss in Pakistan, the religious court, like the Islamic religious court, said that when the government, under like Western secular scrutiny, banned child marriages, and they said this is Islamophobic. And I'm like, it may not be true of every form of Islam, but certainly within their Islamic culture, that the religious leaders, felt that way, meant that it was an attack on their communities. Now, I do not think kids should be forced to get married, which is often what's happening in these instances. But am I gonna, deploy a force to Pakistan to force them to follow my way of living and everything? No, there's a huge negative externality to do that, right?
Yeah. But let's talk about beyond this, other instances of men actually successfully fighting back, because beyond the 50-50 custody advancements and the Heartbeat Act, there are several clear and concrete outcomes from men's right advocacy in the United States that are blowing my mind, because I just thought this would never happen.
By the way, funny side note here on abortion. At one point, we were approached by this guy from like right-wing circles who was actually raising a pro-abortion fund because he was part of the, scientific racism, like actually racist view.
For the same that Planned Parenthood was all pro-abortion.
Yes, well, originally, this was the same. I mean, Planned Parenthood is still, I think, 89% of them are in minority communities, and I think the majority of abortions minorities. Like, I think they're hugely represented.
I mean, historically, they were. Pretty sure they still are.
Yeah, and that's specifically what he wanted to fund, was abortion clinics in minority neighborhoods. And I'm like, oh my god. I mean, it would be
fire up the gas chambers.
I think it's a fun thing from somebody of their perspective to do.
No, it's the
however
effective altruism of the we want to.
No, but the reason why is either it resolves with more minority communities like actually grokking that abortion was actually trying to genocide them, and like they should be against it and making.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, you could even argue that someone who.
Basically, I mean, I think partisan was actually to fund a lot of this and then be like, surprise.
Yeah. Now, do you get it now? Do you get it now?
Yeah. Like, do you get it now? So you get to choose. Either it's great what Planned Parenthood is doing.
Oh, that's some 5D chess right there. Damn. Okay.
And the cynicism to be like, yeah, I'll kill a few babies if it makes my message, if it makes my point.
Yeah. Like if in the end it gets people to actually be like, wait, this was another, because I mean, the Black community has suffered so many genuine medical conspiracies. And if this can finally be revealed as yet another of like, hey, you've been systematically deleting your children because predominantly white people want you to, would be great. I want that to become a pervasive meme, because however you feel about abortion, it's pretty messed up. Understatement. But yeah, any other instances of men fighting back, because again, this is mind-blowing. I just thought it would never happen. There have been successful lawsuits on employment anti-discrimination against men. Did you know that?
Wait, what?
I know. So there was the Supreme
Men
Court.
can sue teams for only hiring women?
Yeah, let me give you
We
some.
didn't do that for that director team that came to our house and it was all women.
I
And I
know,
was
I
like,
know. Well, yeah, but the thing is, I don't think anyone knows these have been successful. But I think that
no.
there's this like undercurrent, and it's going to bubble up like a giant geyser of freedom for men. But so yeah, there's a Supreme Court ruling on equal standards in 2025. The Supreme Court, and that's this year, so this is just happening. The Supreme Court unanimously held that men and majority group employees cannot be held to a higher standard of proof than other groups in employment discrimination lawsuits. This ruling set a nationwide precedent for fair and equal treatment in Title 12 claims brought by male employees. Then there's the reverse discrimination lawsuits. There are multiple 7-figure employment law settlements involving men who won claims of being disadvantaged or terminated during diversity initiatives due to gender. For example, in 2024, a white male executive won a significant sum for being replaced by a less experienced woman under a corporate diversity plan, although punitive damages were limited by the court. So progress.
Yes.
And then there's also EEOC enforcement actions. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, has represented male workers in gender discrimination suits, leading to company settlements that revised internal HR policies, ensuring men receive the same protection as women regarding layoffs, promotions, and pay. And this is meaningful because so many white men we know, including you, have been told, like, hey, off the record, we can't hire you.
Yeah.
Even though you are more qualified than the other people we're hiring. And this was just, it was kind of understood among everyone this has happened to, including you, that there's absolutely no way this is ever going to be stopped. There's nothing you can do about it. Basically, like, that career path is written off. This is changing. And then there are also some broader legal and regulatory outcomes. So the National Center for Men Litigation is a group that has supported and occasionally won cases regarding paternity fraud, reproductive rights, such as notification before adoption, and opposition to male-only draft registration, which is influencing ongoing policy debates at the state and federal levels. So this is shaping new legislation. And then there are some changing alimony and child support guidelines. So some states and courts have had decisions basically that resulted in more gender neutral alimony and support awards, which is reducing the gender gap in post-divorce financial obligations, which is again huge because, as you pointed out at the beginning of this, like there's this very like adverse incentive for women to just get divorced because it's kind of more convenient for them in that case. And we see this in the data too, that when there's a divorce, you look at the well-being of men versus women post-divorce. And men's well-being goes down, women's well-being goes up. So
well, yeah, who's paying who often, you know?
I know,
think
exactly.
This up.
No. So here's where I think we have a lot of room for improvement. And this is something that's been pointed out repeatedly by people who watch and listen to Basecamp and chime in the comments. Paternity fraud. So I asked how common paternity fraud is in the USA. Generally, the population estimate from most current studies and genetic analyses suggest it's between 1% and 5%. But I lean more towards the finding of a 2023 scientific study published in Science Direct, which found that about 5% of 23,196 family tree DNA users discovered an unexpected biological parent. I love that way of putting it, which highlights just how common such surprises have become. 5%.
No, I thought that was 5% of population's already suspecting it.
No, that's the thing. Because here we're looking at, so in cases already expecting it, it's way higher. Court-ordered DNA tests see super high rates of this. In cases where paternity is legally disputed and DNA testing is ordered by courts, the exclusion rate is much higher, between 12 and 30%. So when a dude suspects it.
No, but I mean, I thought the 5% was of tests that were done.
No. So that the 2023 study I cited looked at family tree DNA users. This is just one of those, like, look at my ancestry websites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is this isn't cases. In cases where there's suspicion, 12 to 30%, it's not, you're not the dad.
I've got to knock some other guys' wives up. Like, that would be fun. This sounds
clearly
easy.
There's a lot of, I mean, 5%.
That means 1 in 20 kids. That means one kid in like our kid's classroom.
But then here's also where, like, one, I'm like shocked by how many people don't have the dads they expect. But the punishments are so nerfed. In most jurisdictions, paternity fraud is generally treated as a civil matter rather than a crime. And there are some exceptions.
Very severe crime, I think. It should be treated as grand theft.
Yeah. Well, here's what in Nevada, which is considered like a really strict state about this. Like Nevada is, we're like, we support the men. No, they don't, because they classify it as a gross misdemeanor. Oh my goodness. But what does what's the punishable sentence is 364 days in jail, a year minus a day, and a $2,000 fine. Oh no. $2,000 for cucking you. I can't.
$2,000, you said?
$2,000. And
oh my God. Less
than a year in jail. Which of course probably doesn't even get enforced because she's a mother. She needs to be there for the child.
Of course.
So it's basically a $2,000 fine in the strict state. Okay? In most cases, it's just civil. Knowingly misrepresenting a child's paternity may, in some states, constitute fraud and be subject to criminal penalties like fines or imprisonment, which is like what the case in Nevada. But again, the imprisonment is basically not going to happen. Basically, criminal convictions are extremely rare, given the burden of proving deliberate intent to defraud. Like, women could just be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just such a slut. I didn't realize."
Yeah, is being a slut illegal now?
Yeah, sorry. How do I keep track of it anyway? So it's also just really messed up how men get screwed over, because in many states, the defrauded father must contest paternity within a certain legal time frame.
What?
And after this window closes, it may be impossible to pursue reimbursement or terminate support.
My understanding is after this time window, they actually are forced to pay child support.
Yeah.
Even in the case of a divorce.
Yep. Yeah. Like the statute of limitations. Some courts also, in addition, weigh the child's best interests, maintaining support and visitation even after the fraud is uncovered, if a strong parent-child relationship exists, or if honestly they just think the child is better off. So it's just really screwed up. So I mean, what Malcolm does, full transparency, because some of the cases in which there's paternity fraud, it's not all just men being cucked by women who are sleeping with other people. It's also mix-ups at IVF clinics, some intentional, some unintentional, like a sperm sample getting
This is why I DNA test, well, most of our kids. I sort of stopped doing it after a while because there was never a mistake in all my kids.
No, you've done it with every single one of our kids.
I have,
for the record. Yeah.
Well, because you think I won't really love them until after I've gotten the test back.
No, man, you're like, I'd feel more comfortable with it. And then you always like, you have this reaction when the infants come home. Watch, it's going to happen again with Tex next week. Where you're going to be like, I don't know. What is that? What is this crying worm? Like, you're not a baby person. And I feel like one of your mental coping mechanisms for not feeling a strong bond to infants, because not every man, like 10% of men are like baby men. They love babies. Let me hold the baby. I love babies. And like the other men are like, hand it to me when it's more baked. But I think that your coping mechanism is like, I don't feel anything. And I know that I should be feeling something because society like lies to men about like, oh no, you'll be in love. It's going to be the most magical moment to you ever. And they don't feel that. So then you're like, okay, well, it must be that like I can intuitively sense that I'm not actually the father. And then at that point you get the paternity test and maybe it gives you some comfort. I'm not sure. I think so this embryo comes from the same batch as Titan and Industry. The odds that he is not, like the sperm was mixed up with that IVF batch.
Yeah.
I mean, after 2 of them have been confirmed to be yours is pretty low. I think you're safe. Maybe we can save the money if you're up for it, but I welcome it still. So even when there's no like actual cucking that takes place, again, like legally men have so little discourse. So I feel like this should be the next area where, I mean, if we're getting this momentum, right? If men are, the return of men, they're striking back. They're the revenge of the man. Let's focus on paternity fraud because that's terrifying.
I love you to death, Simone.
I love you too, Malcolm.
And thank you for not divorce raping me and taking all my stuff.
Well, I had the chance.
We have delightful kids.
Things are weird.
So, question.
Yeah.
How did the episode do today? The one on me getting a harem.
The number of comments that it elicited blew my mind, because it wasn't like, in terms of performance, it wasn't our best episode of the past 7 days. Like, it started out strong and now I think it's 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Bummer.
And yet it has a ton of comments. So if I look at comments relative to what we're used to, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. People had a lot of fun discussing it, clearly.
I thought it would do well.
Me too. That's why I outlined it. There it is. Sorry. Yeah, so it currently has 600 comments, which is a lot for our episodes. So our last episode for Jimmy Kimmel had 573, but then there was 379, 257. Whoa. The one on the trans community's involvement has now 1,916 comments. Okay, so I guess after some days pass, they rack up. That's wild.
But what did people have to say? Were there comments?
They thought that the fight at the end was brutal and very entertaining.
That was a brutal fight.
Yeah, terrifying. They were amused by our differences in opinion about the merits of making our marriage into a harem marriage.
People were like, "Yeah, Malcolm, get a second and third wife."
Oh my god. And then, I mean, a lot of people, I guess they didn't watch the video because we fully acknowledge this in our conversation, that society is worse off with polygamy or without monogamy.
We didn't talk about it a lot, though. Like,
we acknowledged it. We didn't like make it the. I mean, I feel like it's a truth universally acknowledged that societies are worse off when they're polygamous. But we're looking at, and maybe I should have made this point in the episode, we're looking at a future in which, regardless, most people in society are going to be broadly disenfranchised. So if we're looking at a future where already people are screwed, already people are free radicals and unmarried, does it really matter that much that we try to find solutions to collect more people that could have potential? Maybe not. Because otherwise, what I think the future is just the same number of unmarried men and women who are economically disempowered and disenfranchised and politically disenfranchised. But maybe some of those women, God, this sounds terrible, could be put to use as
You're very incel, Simone.
members of a harem. You know what? We're not going to talk about this anymore. I give up.
Hold on. Did you see the attack thing that was found at the UN today?
Oh, because UNGA is happening in New York. Remember when we hosted parties in New York and didn't realize it was during UNGA, and the traffic was so bad you could basically not move anywhere in the city?
Yeah.
Why would you
So
do it?
they set up like 100,000 like SIM cards in a way that would have crashed New York's cell phone system. And well, it's interesting.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. I was trying to prep an episode on it. I just couldn't get enough information. So maybe after more information comes out. But what's interesting about it is it appears that it was likely in preparation for something else.
Ooh.
Because it required enough sophistication that they said it was probably a state level player. But a state level player doesn't
Seems kind of Masadi if we're getting all high tech here.
Well, they don't just care about shutting down all the phones in New York. Like, that doesn't buy you that much disruption or anything like that.
Yeah, doing that in connection with something else is the thing,
is the point. Right. Yes. So the question is what was the else that they had planned?
Dun, dun, dun.
An assassination, who knows? But
well, thank goodness some unnamed Jack Bauer has just stopped all that from happening.
What happened? Jack Bauer? I don't understand your joke.
We're old. Do you remember the TV show 24?
No. I remember like Dun Dun and
dun. Yeah. The best thing about 24 as a show wasn't actually the show itself, which was just very stressful. This man like never had a chance to take a potty break, but it was basically about him like saving the world because he only had 24 hours to do it. And I think he was working for the government, but there's this amazing like Japanese song about him where they pronounce his name Jakubawa, and it's the best thing in the entire world, and that's all I can think about. But let's get into it.
I'll let you get started. And I mean, I'm just really excited to be pushing forward with RFAB. Just so people know, on the rfab.ai, there's been a ton of improvements on the back end, but we're trying to sort of synthesize them all so we can get a new stable front end running, which is what you would have access to through rfab.ai. But applying to Andreessen again, both of our projects made it to the final round last time.
To their speed run program.
Yeah, so we'll see. I would, by the way, if anyone's watching and you know people making judgments in the speedrun program, say, hey, Malcolm and Simone are pretty cool.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, right. Just for people who are wondering, this episode was recorded a while ago, so the rfab.ai stuff has mostly been uploaded now. We still have a number of bugs on the site that we're working through. I mean, I hope to have it done by this weekend. The most annoying ones for me are cloud saves being deleted, but I think local saves are still persistent in between updates. Oh, and the pages that list all of the optional scenarios, you have to reload them for them to work sometimes, but maybe we fix that. So other than that, I don't know. I'm impressed with what we've gotten together. We didn't end up getting into the speedrun program, so you don't need to put in a good word for us. But if the project sounds interesting to you, or if you've tried it and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good compared to the other sites, let us know. Oh, and also to everyone who has taken the time to try it while it's been in this developmental stage, I know it's a pain. I really appreciate it.
Do you guys like playing in the rain? Yeah. Why?
Because I like rain. Yeah.
It's fucked.
No, you do not go into that puddle. Torsten, do not. You will get soaked.
Why? How can it get soaked?
It's too deep. It's not even a puddle. It's like a lake.
Oh. So it's a lake puddle?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Those puddles will get soaked.
No, you will not go into it because you will sink.
Oh. Because it's deeper, and this like deep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's go. It's snow puddle.
Yeah, you're not sinking in that one, so you can jump. Yeah, because you were running and I told you to stop. Because I didn't want you to fall and get muddy.